So, as many of you know, I've been a pretty hardcore Republican for quite a few years now. I've been raised as a born again Christian. I was saved when I was quite young. And, well, my faith is at the center of my political world, and I do my best to make sure it's at the center of my life. That doesn't mean that I'm going to bow down to Republicans down in Washington, D.C. Not at all. So it's too bad when I see comments on a Facebook post expressing discontent and anger with Republicans down in D.C. saying that I'm somehow a rhino. Not at all. I made it very clear. I'll read the post to you guys. Jesus heals and is the solution. His teachings align with conservative values, so I will keep voting Republican. With that said, I'm mad at Republicans in D.C. I voted in 24 expecting MAGA, but have gotten 50-year loans, extreme foreign aid, and little to no economic relief. Now, I don't know if I should have said I'm mad at Republicans. I should do my best to be as patient as possible. But I'm less than impressed. You can read statistics coming from the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle. The right will be saying costs are going down, and the left will be saying costs are going up. I don't know who to believe because reality is things are still expensive. And there's a divide between folks that are, I'd say, roughly middle-aged and older that already have a foundation built below them. There's a difference between those couple generations and people my age. One person commented that a can of soup shouldn't cost $4. Now, I don't know if every can of soup is actually costing $4, but his point being, things are expensive. And those of us who are younger can't afford, broadly speaking, at least in the same way that our parents and grandparents could, to get a foundation built below us. And so, does that mean I'm a Republican in name only for wanting affordability? No. But we're not getting the relief we were promised. And one person commented on this post that being in the state I'm in makes it worse. I live in the state of Maine. So, yes, things are more expensive here. Part of it is just the nature of the beast. Things living where we are is going to be more expensive, but also the way things in Augusta are being run aren't helping with a lot of stuff. But still, even then, you can go to other states that are more affordable, and it is tough to live. You could go to Florida, you could go to Tennessee, you could go to Texas, you could go to a lot of the red states that are known for being run relatively well, especially Florida and Tennessee. There still isn't the relief that was broadly promised, or at least that we went into. We all had a mentality that prices were going to go down, and we were going to not necessarily have nearly as many foreign wars as we have in the last 20 years. We were hoping for a continuation of President Trump's first 4 years. I'm not seeing that in its fullest extent. And with a lot of other politicians, I know, okay, they make promises, they don't keep them nearly as much as they should. I expect that with typical politicians. With President Trump, I hope for something different. I was talking with a friend of mine, and the right seems to be, how do I put this? This term for President Trump doesn't feel the same as the first one did. And it's interesting I can say that because as someone who's a dedicated member of MAGA, it doesn't feel the same. Now, I was quite a bit younger during President Trump's first term, but I remember the energy during his 2020 campaign. I remember the feeling. There was something in me that was excited. I wasn't even old enough to vote yet, but I was pretty close to that age. And so looking at people around me confident, excited. I could hear people that were older than me talk about the financial success they were experiencing within that term. I remember seeing the signs at gas stations where gas prices, right, especially right before the pandemic, dropped below $2 a gallon. Where is that? I don't have the same peace that I did before. And being in Republican campaigns, I probably shouldn't be saying anything like this right now. This is not helping my political success. But it's true. I am not seeing the same success that we did before. Now, some folks are going to say it's only been 10 months. I'm going to say, yeah, it's been 10 months. Why aren't we closer to those goals? We have a majority in the House, we have a majority in the Senate, and we have the presidency. The first couple months were much more encouraging in terms of things like boosting confidence in our nation, restoring respect. Some people think it was a unnecessary move, but referring to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, I think that was a very good move. That shows, no, it's America first. Don't mess with us. So I'm okay with that. The ideas, at least the concepts behind the tariffs, from what I can tell, from what I see, at least aren't a bad idea. If we can bring more revenue into our nation to either give money to the citizens or hopefully also tackle our national debt, which should be the main goal, I'm okay with that in theory. But it seemed, even back then, rather than having a priority on affordability, we weren't going the right direction, at least in terms of a 2-year period. We didn't seem to have a proper focus on the midterms. Yes, the tariffs, in theory, are good. Restoring respect to our nation is good. Restoring strength to our military, that's good. Getting the woke garbage out of our military and our public institutions, that's good. I respect all of those things. And a lot of Americans respect that as well. They want that as well. But most of all, they need to be able to afford groceries. So, D.C. and the Trump administration, although doing a lot of good things, focused on the wrong things. They weren't necessarily bad things, but they weren't the right things for the time. And so, I was encouraged at the beginning, but I was skeptical of, okay, we're doing a lot of good things, but maybe our priorities aren't set on the right things yet. Well, 10 months later, people are still talking about high prices like they were during President Biden's term. That's not a good thing. 10 months is almost a year. So, what's going on? We need to make sure prices are affordable. Now, like I said, I think there's a divide between young conservatives and middle-aged and older conservatives. Because if you've already got, take the 50-year mortgage. If you already own your house, or you're already close to paying off your house, the idea of a 50-year mortgage, you might say, hey, it's foolish, but whatever. For someone like me, I'm 21, I will be 71 in 50 years if I take out that mortgage tomorrow. I don't want to be in debt for the rest of my life. That whole concept behind a 50-year mortgage is foolish. I don't care if that's Joe Biden or President Trump pitching that idea. The 50-year mortgage idea is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of. I don't want to be in debt for the rest of my life. And, okay, here's another thing. In terms of strengthening our military, we need to have a strong military that's well-funded. I agree with that completely. But why does it feel like we're on the brink of war? I support getting rid of the garbage ideologies that went through our military. LGBTQ ideologies should not be dictating parts of our military. but I don't want to be on the brink of war. So parts of the things we've done with the military so far are good, but we're kind of getting the early 2000s George Bush type feel of things again. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. That's how it feels. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. Comment, message me, let me know if I'm wrong. Because quite frankly, I want to be wrong. I would much rather make this post and have people light me up in the comments telling me how I'm wrong and that we're not heading that way. That would be fantastic. Because quite frankly, I don't want to leave. I built a brand being a member of MAGA, and now seeing some signs that we might be heading back towards the early 2000s way of doing things. I don't want the Dick Cheney Republican brand. I want the 2016 Donald Trump brand. But now I don't know where we are. So, okay, I see a comment here. Oh, I can't open it. Yeah, okay, someone just commented, absolutely, 50-year mortgages are bogus. Unfortunately, that's where I think we're headed. Yeah, I do too. But I hope we're not. I say I hope. We need to be praying. I not overly encouraged with that side of things. Jesus is the solution. And I know, being in Republican politics, I have been told that, religion pushes people away. Yes, I know I can't force it down people's throat. But whatever. He's the solution. We got to trust him. I can vent like crazy and continue to talk about how I'm unhappy with DC. If there's positives living here in the state of Maine, the Republican candidates we've got running are doing a fantastic job. The Republicans we have in Augusta are doing a fantastic job. There's a major split between Washington, D.C. and state level politics. I really do encourage you guys to check that out. Look at your state representatives versus the individuals in D.C. I'm incredibly encouraged by a lot of the Republicans here in the state of Maine. But ultimately, Jesus is the solution. I talked about not being as comfortable and happy with the way things are going now versus how they were in 2020. I'm more and more believing that's a spiritual thing. There's a huge shift in my comfort level between 2020 and 2025 now. I think there's a spiritual shift down in Washington, D.C. I think there's a spiritual shift within me. And I know our spiritual walk shouldn't just be guided by feelings. But there's something unsettling that I can't fully elaborate on, but something's not right. Someone just commented, can you elaborate on why Jesus is the solution? Okay. I say he's the solution, which he is. I think the bigger thing is we need to have our faith and our hope placed in him. I've campaigned for so many candidates. I built a brand being a member of MAGA. All of that put together, I'll admit there have been times I've put my hope in Republicans. I've put my hope in the candidate. Well, guess what? We're all human. The candidate, no matter how perfect they are, can let us down. Jesus will never let you down. He may tell you things you don't like, but he's always going to love you and give you the truth. Every word from Genesis 1:1 to the end of Revelation, everything in the Bible is true. So our hope and trust needs to be in Jesus. Once our faith is placed in him, it will no longer be placed in politicians, and we need to keep it that way. And so, I guess Jesus may not fix everything in D.C., But when my faith and hope is placed in him, not Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Thomas Massey, whether good or bad, when my faith is not in someone in D.C., on a personal level, I think I should stop pushing it as a solution to D.C. On a personal level, Jesus is the solution. And then that doesn't mean he can't fix D.C., but we need to be in prayer. The church needs to step up. We need to be vocal and trust the Lord, not trust in politicians. So it doesn't mean we're not politically active. And it also doesn't mean that we don't vote for Republicans. Because you look at some of the things the Democrat Party stands for. I do not hate Democrats, and there are chances that we can work together for good things. When I saw some pretty dedicated Republicans and AOC standing on the same stage or behind the same podium working together on legislation, I was blown away. I don't know if you guys missed that, but they were talking about, I think it was stopping members of Congress from insider trading. Or not insider trading, but trading stocks, which essentially means the same thing. I could be wrong. I think that was legislation. It was a bit ago. But the fact that I saw Republicans and Democrats working together, and it wasn't just the cheesy bipartisan brand they push. No, it was genuinely. You've got AOC, who's about as far left as they get, and then some pretty hardcore Republicans working together. I never saw that coming. But hey, we'll take it. But still, even though sometimes we can work together, on an ideological level, you have to look and say, hey, what do the Democrats stand for? What do the Republicans stand for? If you had to put the ideological standpoints on paper, the Bible aligns with Republican values. And it saddens me that Republicans don't fight for those values down in D.C. At least not nearly as much as they should. Does that mean we should force religion down people's throats? No. If you're not a born-again Christian, I'll still be your homie. I'll have a good time. I will share my faith with you. I'll pray for you. But I'm not going to force it down your throat. So, you might wonder, okay, what are some of those values? Okay, abortion. The left consistently has pushed for abortion. The Lord has known you since you were conceived, since before you were conceived. The Bible openly talks about not taking another life. Like, it's kind of a clear concept there that Scripture is pro-life. Democrat Party's not. And that's a big one. The Bible's pro-life. I'm a Christian, so I believe the Bible. I'm pro-life. The Republican Party's pro-life. Okay. That's a pretty easy foundation to follow. LGBTQ ideologies. Man, if you believe that the Bible backs up LGBTQ ideologies, you're not reading the right Bible. There have been pastors and different type of ministers that have twisted Scripture. They've twisted the meaning of love. But you can twist something all you want. If you're twisting it, it's not the original text. Or it may be the original words, but you've twisted the meaning, so the meaning isn't accurate. If you're going to be loving to someone, you need to be truthful. Therefore, sometimes the truth, the old saying, truth hurts. Sometimes the truth might hurt, so you need to be careful in how you present the truth. But the truth is, the Bible doesn't support LGBTQ ideologies. Therefore, I can't. And the Republican ideologies also don't support LGBTQ ideologies. So, those two big things, usually, especially how big they are in our politics these days, that kind of makes it clear which side you're going to be on. I'm a Republican. And, I think there's less connection to scriptural values here, but I do think you can find some connections. But I want the government off my back. I want the Second Amendment defended. Those are two big things. I don't want mass surveillance. I really don't. I don't want a police state. And that's another thing with D.C. I am less and less happy with how Republicans in D.C. are operating with this. I see headlines. Not happy with it. I shouldn't look up. I screenshotted it. Right here. I screenshotted. Is Palantir creating a database of U.S. citizens? And Google's first result says, the White House has contacted Palantir, a Colorado-based analytics company co-founded by Trump supporter Peter Thiel, to assist in compiling a database of personal information on American citizens, according to unnamed government officials and Palantir employees who spoke with the New York Times. So does that guarantee that there's a surveillance state coming? No. But the fact that that's a result at all blows me away. I support President Trump, but I don't support that. If that's true, that's not comforting at all. The fact that there's, right here, I think it was, got a news article right here. Trump tabs Palantir to compile data on Americans. And now if you read through the article, it's questionable if that's actually the case. We don't really know for sure, at least from what I've read. But the fact that there's speculation of that at all makes me uncomfortable. Until I know for sure, I'm not going to get too freaked out about it. But I surely don't like the fact that these are headlines at all. The other part of this, though, I mentioned I'm a Christian, makes me wonder if we're in the end times. And people hear that, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. The end times could be 10 million years from now, or they could be tomorrow. Doesn't really make a difference either way. But you see headlines about a surveillance state. It does make you wonder. And I think I literally looked up Bible verses on a surveillance state. Something around there. And First Thessalonians 5:3 came up. And so I'm actually going to read verses 2 through 4. First Thessalonians 5:2. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that as the day should overtake you as a thief. Okay. So, I'm not a pastor, but I'm looking at this and saying, okay, let's say there is a surveillance state coming. The pitch is peace and safety. If that's their pitch, okay. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to be comfortable about it. Don't necessarily like it. But I'm not going to worry about it. It's in the Lord's hands. Someone just commented, what are your thoughts on Trump's potential involvement with Epstein? That is about the most conflicting, I don't know. Because you got to look at it from a couple different perspectives. There's one side of things that says Trump hasn't released the Epstein files, so he's involved with them. And he said he was going to release them. That perspective could be 100% valid. There's another perspective. If the Democrats cared about them so much, why didn't they release them a couple of years ago? That's another valid perspective. Mike Johnson also saying that President Trump was an FBI informant. Against. Or not necessarily against, but at least from the way he presented it, it made it sound like, let's just say President Trump wasn't in support of Epstein when he was a supposed FBI informant. There's another side of me that does wonder, are we ever going to get truly unredacted files? Are we truly going to get everything? I do wonder that. I don't want that to be the case. We need more government transparency. It drives me nuts because I was a dedicated supporter of President Trump. And so to find that let's say we did come to that point. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. If he was actually involved in this whole situation, it'd drive me nuts. But I don't know. That would be incredibly disappointing. And I don't know where to stand on whether he's guilty or whether he's not. Because, like I said, Democrats had a lot of time to take care of the situation, and they didn't seem to care until it was politically convenient. And President Trump kind of rode the line, but it seemed like he might release them. Pam Bondi said she had stuff sitting on her desk. And now all of a sudden the list doesn't exist. And it's a hoax. But now they give us the files, but some of them are redacted. None of it makes sense. I'm not happy with the situation at all. I'm not happy with President Trump. I'm not happy with the Democrats. And I can't trust either side. Because it's also difficult with the age of social media we have. Social media can be a blessing in some senses where you see, okay, we can get more information. We're not just dependent on the media. That is a good thing from a certain perspective. At the same time, my Instagram feed is a convoluted mess because I get stuff from the Democrats, their official, like, nationwide party account. I get stuff from the GOP. Take Epstein away from it. I get posts saying we're in the golden age from the GOP, and then I get posts from the Democrats, their national account, saying that our nation's in a terrible state. I'm a Republican, but both sides constantly saying stuff. It does get difficult to know who's telling the truth. And I see posts from not necessarily party-affiliated accounts, but posts that support certain parties or certain political figures that make Trump look as if he's completely innocent. And then I see ones that make it look like he's going to be behind bars within the next month. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And you know what? There's another problem. Here on the right side of the aisle, I'm a Trump supporter. But more and more, I get closer to taking this hat off. Not that I don't want to support President Trump, but I'm less and less satisfied with how things are going in D.C. But I'm a rhino or a traitor as soon as that happens. And shots of political success within the next 10 years go out the door. So that gets old. It's kind of the situation with Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, there were a lot of times just because of how she presented herself, in order to have any political success, you kind of just had to back away. Unless you were in a district that was hardcore MAGA, you had to back away. But now looking at her, I've never been more politically close to that woman. Thomas Massie. I didn't know who the dude was a few months ago. I had no idea. I'm all the way up in what some people consider southern Canada. I love my state of Maine, but I'm up in the middle of nowhere. And now I'm hearing this name, Thomas Massie, pop up all the time. I don't hate to admit it. I like a lot of the things this man has to say. And he might be older than me, but he reflects the views of young conservative men. I don't want my gun rights taken away. I want affordability. I want religious freedom. I want the government off my back. Okay? If you give that to me as a political package, also throw in get men out of women's spaces, men are men, women are women, and abortion's wrong, I'm all in. Sign me up. That's my ideal political package. Hold me to it. And voting for the current president In 2016, 2020, and 2024, we got quite a bit of that. But now with the convoluted mess we see down in DC, I'm not as confident that we're going to get those type things. Do I see President Trump switching his position on LGBTQ ideologies? No. Do I see him switching his position on abortion, broadly speaking? No. But considering the fact that even though some statistics might reflect that his plans are working, us, the citizens, have not felt the tangible effects. I think that's a big thing. On social media, you can throw statistics at people. Left-wing statistics or right-wing statistics. It's sad that we have to have left-wing statistics and right-wing statistics. They should line up. Sadly, they don't. But either way, you can chuck statistics at people. But if the voters can't feel the tangible effects, we're not going to get anywhere. And so, I mentioned it before, Brett Cooper, being a young conservative herself, has been able to comment on this quite accurately. She commented on how Mamdani won the mayoral election in D.C. Charisma is a big thing in politics. You got to have charisma to be able to win an election. I wish I had charisma like the president. I don't. He's got it. But that's not the only thing. If you look at Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate in New York City for mayor, a terrific candidate, a hilarious dude, got charisma up the frickin' wazoo. But being New York City, it's going to be difficult to win as a Republican. And now looking at the other two candidates, as Sliwa said, we got one candidate who's slapping fannies and killing grannies. He didn't have a shot. Towards the end of it, it looked like if Sliwa dropped out, Cuomo might have a shot. But even then, no. Mamdani, he pitched makeshift affordability in a way. It was government-controlled affordability, but he pitched the idea of housing and groceries, and in a way that you could get them. So it wasn't genuine affordability, but it was the idea that, makeshift socialism. It's a giant step towards that if his ideas were actually put into practice. And people are at the point where they're like, we can't afford to eat, we can't afford to live, whatever, we're done. We're stopped, we don't want to be homeless, and we want food. So they went with him. Republicans need to realize, oh shoot, people don't care about hardcore party politics. They want to be able to put food on their tables and have a roof over their head. Parents want to be able to provide for their kids, and us young people want to have the shot to be parents and financially successful at that. We want to be able to afford a home. We want to be able to afford our medication. I'm an epileptic. A lot of us young folks are looking at housing costs, gas costs, and food costs, and some other stuff, but those are big things, and college costs. Me, I'm going back to school in the spring, so college costs is one of the big things. But the next big thing is, but the job I'm working right now, a 40-hour, and if I work overtime, a 50-hour-a-week job, I would struggle to pay for the medication I need to prevent myself from having seizures. And in order to be a productive member of society in terms of employment, I can't be having seizures. But I'm an epileptic. I need the medication I'm on, but I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to chuck out of my pocket week after week. Month after month. So, we need affordability. And neither party has the solutions on healthcare costs. It's an absolute disaster when it comes to healthcare. But still, it's another cost that is way too high for not just young people, but older folks too. You know, when I started getting active in campaigns back in 2022, there was a high focus, considering the state I live in, Maine, is an older state. There was a lot of focus on affordability, especially for medications and heating oil for seniors. Well, guess what? More and more, I'm looking at the campaign topics I was originally pushed to give out to people that were geared towards the senior citizens. I'm like, well, geez, I'm relating to those. The general affordability pitches we were giving with campaigns for like Governor LePage and Bruce Poliquin back in 2022 here in Maine, I am relating to as a 21-year-old. Being able to afford the medications, being able to afford to stay in your house. Okay, for me, it's being able to afford the medications and being able to afford to get a house. Never thought that would happen, but the American dream that my grandparents were given, they got, and now it's being taken away from them. The American dream that my grandparents were given, my generation may never be able to have if affordability doesn't get fixed. At this rate, Republicans need to get their act together. Because of my religious convictions, I cannot vote for a Democrat. I've also seen how they've operated. Government solutions to everything, that isn't the solution. Democrats don't have the solutions. If Republicans actually went to their base ideological standpoints of get the government off your back, lower the cost of living, lower taxes, and you know what? Here's some easy things we can do. Get rid of the income tax, get rid of the property tax. Get rid of them. And people might freak out and say, oh, that's going to hurt federal revenue. Oh, no, that's not good. Government programs this, government programs that. Lower the cost of living, we won't need as many government programs. Lower the cost of living, people won't have to be dependent on government programs to survive. It's not a crazy concept. If you lower the cost of living, if you get rid of incredible taxes, guess what? People won't need as many government programs. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but it kind of seems like some people in D.C. want you to be dependent on the government, so that way you'll continue to vote for them. You know what? This is going to be an interesting thing to see. But my generation, the generation of people that are active with organizations like Turning Point USA, once we start running for office, I want to see if there's a wave, and I encourage this to happen, a wave of people my age with the ideological standpoints that people in organizations like Turning Point USA and Young Americans for Liberty hold, a whole wave of them nationwide run for office without major corporate funding. But so many of them run that we fracture the vote enough away from big money candidates so that way the people like us win the primaries. If we can flush out big money candidates and make it so that the establishment money has no effect in politics, imagine how fast we could drain the swamp. I like that idea. And you know, there was a whole narrative not too long ago that was very popular saying my generation doesn't like to work. There are parts of my generation, I will admit, that don't work as hard as they should. But there is a vast amount of my generation, and I think it's fair to say the majority, is working. We're working our butts off to get to where we need to be. But unlike our grandparents, we can't buy a house for 14 raspberries. DC says we need a 50-year loan. So, have a whole flood of my generation run for office in DC? We're going to clean house real quick. Really fast. The Republican Party will have an entirely different look. I don't think it'll have MAGA as a look. I don't think it will have Reagan as a look. It won't even have Abraham Lincoln as a look. We'll look back and see, okay, what did Lincoln do right? What did Bush do right? Even though we don't like all the things he did, there are probably some things he did right. What did Lincoln do right? What did Reagan do right? What did Bush do right? What did Trump do right? Okay, analyze those things and say, hey, we'll take what they did right, put them into practice, and then say the other garbage we saw over the course of our grandparents, our parents, and our lifetimes, we are going to clean house and do what's right all the way through. We can have a conservative, libertarian, Republican Party of people my age fill D.C. in, say, give about 10 years and clean house. I love the idea of that. But it's going to take a lot because big money doesn't like that. Big money hates that. But I think it's worth it. Clean house in D.C., shrink the size of government, get rid of ominous bills. I hate big bills. And being in politics, I've heard mixed views on them. No. A bill should be on one thing, and one thing only. If I want to make it so that one simple thing gets done, we should focus on that one simple thing. Not put on 7 other parts of that bill that have nothing to do with it. If I want to make Elmo's World the national anthem, we should have a bill on making Elmo's World the national anthem. I'm not going to do that, but it's a good example. We're not going to put on parts of the Elmo's World bill regarding national defense, LGBTQ ideologies, and a whole bunch of other things. Now, some of you are thinking that's about the weirdest analogy I could have come up with. You're right, but it gets the point across. We shouldn't be focusing on 17 other things within a bill when it should just be focused on one. There might have been parts of the big, beautiful bill that were good, but there was also a lot of other ones that raised some questions. So let's have a little beautiful bill. Okay, say I was a representative, I'll be pitching bills saying, hey, we got the little beautiful bill, and we've got the second little beautiful bill, we got the third little beautiful bill. We can look at bills like the big beautiful bill and take the good parts out, and we'll have a single little beautiful bill, and then we'll have more little beautiful bills. It also makes it so that we should also get rid of earmarks. We can get rid of the pork. That's an overused term in politics, but get rid of the pork in politics. Make a huge difference. Get rid of the pork in these bills and make it so that the average Joe, like you and me, can understand what's in these bills. I don't know if this could happen, but I'd also love to see a piece of legislation that would make it so that bills aren't written in legalese. They're written in a form of English that we all understand. It shouldn't take 17 lawyers to understand a bill. The representatives go there to represent us. At least that's what they do on paper. So, write it in a language that we understand. Now, okay, I want to see if I can scroll back and find a comment. Robert says, hi, Sam. What's up, Robert? Okay, another person says, are epileptic people able to smoke? Not in a joking way, I'm actually curious. That was JS Caleb M. So JS Caleb M, I have had that idea pitched to me before. There are actually CBD medications. I'm assuming you're talking with marijuana. So I don't know if Mary Jane could help me get rid of my epilepsy. Maybe she could. But currently with the medication I'm on, that's the best way to go. I think let's see, I was diagnosed with epilepsy back in 2017. And so it would have been going into my 8th grade year of middle school. That's when I was diagnosed. Throughout that 8th grade year, we tried a medication that was formed back in the 90s called Keppra. It was a complete joke. I've met at least 1 or 2 other epileptics who've gone on Keppra, and it's a complete joke. If it works for you, great, fantastic. But for me, it was a joke. After that, the Lord blessed me with a chance to go down to an epileptologist down in Portland here in Maine, or Scarborough to be technical. And she had a whole list of medications we could try. And that's kind of what we were warned is this is going to be a year or two of, we know there's a dartboard in the room, but we're not quite sure where it is. We're going to keep chucking darts at the dartboard, and hopefully we hit with these medications. Essentially saying, one of these medications is probably going to work. We don't know which one, though. Eventually, we found a mix of medications that does, I'd say, a 90 to a 95% effective job in preventing seizures. But we never decided to go down the CBD route. The smoking side of things, I've heard that it might have a benefit, but with the medications that I'm on and the relatively good job they've done, the interaction between the CBD and the current medications would be incredibly dangerous. It wouldn't kill me most likely, but it would definitely have negative effects with the epilepsy. So, yeah, no, I think there's some... In terms of medical care, I know this is way off topic from what we were originally talking about. We are truly blessed. The Lord has blessed us. We see a lot of bad things in this world, but you can hear my voice is gravelly now. We are truly blessed to have the medical technology we do now. My AirPod case right here. I have a device called a vagal nerve stimulator in my chest right here. It's about the size of the AirPod case. And there's a wire that runs up my neck. You can see the scar. And it sends a pulse every 3 minutes. And as you can see, my voice is back to normal. It stops sending the pulse. When it sends the pulse, my voice goes gravelly. I sound like the love child, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marge Simpson. But what it does is it sends a pulse to the vagal nerve and helps cancel out seizures. If you had told me just a few years ago that a device like that existed, I would have laughed you out of town. But although it hasn't prevented all seizures, it has prevented many, many, many major episodes. I am truly blessed to have this opportunity to have such a surgery done. So, truly blessed. I'm very happy that it's done a relatively good job. I actually have a magnet here. If I feel a seizure coming on, I can wave the magnet over where the vagal nerve stimulator is, and I can help prevent seizures. It'll send an extra strong electric pulse there. So between the VNS and the medication, we're on a road to success. So yeah, I'm encouraged. But who knows? If I ever find that the medication they've got me on now truly isn't effective, we might try a CBD-based one, but I know the smoking side of things probably isn't the right idea. But well, guys, I probably will wrap up for tonight. I definitely appreciate the questions regarding the epilepsy side of things, the support seen in the comments. I know I have been quite critical of President Trump and Republicans down in D.C. I don't hate the president. I will continue to vote Republican. That's where my faith and my Lord Jesus Christ, who can be your Lord Jesus Christ, has guided me to go. But doesn't mean I'm going to bow down to him. If there is something I can give positive about the Republican side of things, though, here in the state of Maine, state-level politics, we are absolutely blessed to have some of the fantastic representatives we do. Representative Chad Perkins, an absolutely legendary man. I'm not kidding you. Fantastic guy. I live here in Maine, rural part of the state. Jim White is my state representative. Senator Stacey Gearin is my current state senator. And Representative Chad Perkins lives not too far from me. He's in the Dover side of things. He represents that district. So he's not technically my state representative, but is very close to us. Fantastic man. He's currently running for the state senate. I'm endorsing him, or I have endorsed him. We need him in the state senate. But you can get to know these people personally. You can't trust politicians, but folks like Jim, like Chad, notice I refer to them as their first name. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but although they're representative of us in Augusta, you can get to know them to the point where you call them by their first name. It's difficult to do that with people down in D.C. I respect these folks. I trust these folks. I can talk to them about legislation and they'll give me an honest answer. That's something you don't usually find in D.C., no matter who they are. We've got a lot of really good folks. Representative Perkins, like I've mentioned, Representative White, like I've mentioned, Senator Stacey Gearin's done a great job over the time she's been there. Laurel Libby has done a lot of great things for our state. Reagan Paul's done a lot of great things for our state. Billy Bob Fockingham has done great things. She's from the Ellsworth area. There's a lot of really good people down in Augusta, and we are blessed to have them. So I think that there's a huge difference between D.C. and Augusta. I think there's another blessing between, not all states have that blessing. We live in a small state, so you can get to know your representatives personally. I've served in Virginia politics before. And some of you guys already know I'm going back down to Virginia, going to be going to Liberty University this spring for classes for political science. There's that state right there. The people of Virginia don't get the same blessing we do. I remember being down there in Manassas. Great people in those communities. Great people. But I think it was it's between the 13th and the 15th roughest, somewhere in there, richest counties in the nation. There were so many people there. We were working on a state level campaign, and it felt like I was working on a federal level campaign. That's how big it felt. Whereas here at home, yeah, it's important to win your races. But you feel like you're campaigning with a friend. Good chunk of the time. Especially in these rural areas. In Bangor, Lewiston, places like that, more, let's just say, financially well-to-do areas, that's not as common. But still, things feel close to home. We're blessed to have that here in Maine. The fact that I can say I can trust a politician is a very rare thing, and quite frankly, sometimes a dangerous statement. But here in Maine, here in these rural areas, we're blessed. The fact that I can have supper with Dave Hagan and some other people and have just a chill conversation, yeah, sure, serves in Augusta, whatever. We're just having a good time. That's a blessing. It's a rare gift. I love the state of Maine. I'm sad to see how it's been run from the standpoint of Augusta, but we are truly blessed. I can't put any more words to that. The Pine Tree State, it's been abused over the last 20, 30, 40 years, but the culture we have here is like no other. So, I wouldn't be too dismayed. I'm probably not the only person who shares with the discontent and the anger regarding D.C. But here in the state of Maine, we have got some great Republican leadership. We need a Republican majority in the House and the Senate. We need a Republican governor. We need to get someone like Governor Paul LePage elected to Congress. Right now, it's a clear path. That campaign is a clear path to victory. Clear as anything. With Jared Golden not running again, he technically, Governor LePage isn't running unopposed, but he's pretty darn close to it. We've got, I think Jordan Wood is his name. Jordan Wood is his name. But, I mean, who's Jordan Wood? It's a valid question. Like, who's Jordan Wood? Who knows? He ran for Senate, and he kind of, among the insider politics, he kind of built a name for himself. But even then, if I hadn't seen his Instagram, I wouldn't know who he is. And he claims he's running for CD2 now, for Congress. I don't mean to sound cocky, but if Jordan Wood is the only opposition to Governor Paul LePage, that's a clear path to victory as long as we keep up momentum. So, and then we need to get Senator Susan Collins reelected. And I think this is something that people might hear some of the things I've said and say, why are you supporting Senator Susan Collins? Do I love everything she's done? Nope. As a born-again Christian, I do not support her stance on abortion. I don't. That's an easy example. But you analyze the three options. Graham Platinum, Governor Mills, Susan Collins. Am I a diehard supporter of any one of them? No. But I analyzed the three. Who's the best out of the three? Collins all day long. You've got Graham Platinum, who's essentially the Mainer version of Mondami. He's the dude version of AOC. He fits in. He'll be one. He'll fit in with the squad, if you know what I mean. And Governor Mills is the perfect pick for someone like Chuck Schumer. So you've got the socialism squad member, and you've got the member of the Democrat establishment. I don't like either one at all. You look at Governor Mills, she supported the most far-left abortion legislation the state has ever seen. She supports men and women's sports. Quite frankly, I cannot support her. So, yeah, Senator Susan Collins is the clear option. So, all right, guys, I got to end the live pretty soon, but I will make sure you guys are in my prayers. God bless. Have a fantastic evening. And remember, Jesus Christ is the solution. Put Jesus at the beginning and the end, in the middle, in every part of your life. I'm not perfect at it. The Lord's been convicting me to get into the Word more. But we need to do it. Be in the Word. Let Jesus guide and lead your life. Not just guide, but submit to Him. Let Him lead your life. Don't force religion down people's throat, but be vocal. Don't be a street preacher. Quite frankly, I don't agree with that the style of teaching. Be vocal, but don't yell and scream at people. Speak up. We're seeing an Islamic takeover of the nation. Be vocal. Let God work in your heart. Let God work in your heart, and there will be fruit. Act on that fruit. Yes, we need to vote Republican, but especially at the federal level and even state level, Republicans aren't the solution. Jesus is. Republicans aren't the solution at any level. They can do a lot of good work, but if they're not guided by Jesus, it's for nothing. Republicans aren't the solution. Jesus is. Let's bring our nation back to Jesus. Thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic day, and God bless.